Hi, this is Martin Visser coming to you live from the Developer and Architecture Center. I'm here with Greg Hurlman and we're going to talk about Powerapps Pro Dev Extensibility. So Powerapps is mostly focused on citizen developers, but there is a whole Pro Dev story behind it. Greg, could you elaborate on that? What can professional developers do with Powerapps?
So in Powerapps, there are two main stories right now that are happening. One that's been around for about a year and a half, and one that has just gotten into preview. The first being custom connectors. There's over 275 out-of-the-box connectors for the Power Platform to reach out to anything on the internet that gives us data, along with all the Microsoft stuff you might imagine. But if you have an internal API that doesn't have a connector, or a third-party API that we just haven't gotten to yet, you can create a custom connector to bring that data into Powerapps. We also have the Powerapps Component Framework. That is our venue to create custom controls for Powerapps. So if there's a visualization and control that's built out of the product that just doesn't fit your needs, you can create a custom control using TypeScript and JavaScript to create the visualization that you need exactly the way you want it.
I've seen people building these custom connectors in a couple of minutes, right? If you have a Swagger file, an OpenAPI file, and you point it to an anonymous data source, an API, you just build it in a couple of minutes, right? You have a connector and it works. So what does it look like when you want to build a custom connector connecting to your own API? What would you do as a developer?
So if you do have an OpenAPI file or a Swagger file, like you said, you're good to go. If on an internal API, a lot of us don't bother building those, you can, in the web UI, click through and create based on samples, or even through a Postman collection. If you've been querying your API, we'll do our best to build out a model of that API for a custom connector. But the web UI is there. You can start from scratch, start from a file, or give it some data, and we'll do the best to get the API into a connector for you.
What kind of authentication is supported for custom connectors?
So custom connectors can do anonymous authentication, as you mentioned. We can also do basic authentication.
We don't like basic authentication.
No, we don't, but some people, they still do, so we support it. OAuth 2.0, and also with OAuth 2.0, we get Azure AD authentication. So if you have your own API hosted on Azure, whether it's through API management or just an app service, or as like I like to do a lot, through an Azure function, you can support Azure AD auth to get to those APIs as well.
And what I learned when I built my first custom connectors is that every method that you're calling needs to have like a response, like if in the Swagger file or in the OpenAPI file, all the methods need to have these responses, right?
That's right. So every function that you call needs to have an output. There are no functions that you fire for initializations or anything like that. These operations have inputs, or maybe zero, but they always have an output. And when you're building out your connectors, you need to keep in mind, if you have a giant API with hundreds of functions, you don't need to lump them all into one connector. Break it down into a connector maybe that has 7 or 8 functions, and then make it more usable for your users who don't understand the API. They just know if they call your function, they get this data.
Okay, let's talk about the Powerapps component framework. Okay. So I'm very curious to learn what I need to do to build such a custom component. Could you demonstrate to us what developers need to do to get started?
I can, absolutely.
Cool.
So let's take a look at this. Right now, what I've got in front of us here is our environmental settings for the CDS, because the Powerapps Component Framework is in preview, you need to enable it in your environment before it'll start to show up. So when you're in your settings, you click on the Features link here under Product. Let that load. Scroll all the way down to this corner, and make sure you turn on Powerapps Component Framework for Canvas apps. In model-driven apps, it's been out already. For Canvas apps, it's still in preview. You need to turn that on. You turn it on, you hit Save, and you're good to go. I've already done that, so we'll skip that, and we'll move on to our Power App that I've got created. Right now, I've got a Power App that is just an asset tracking system. Somebody's entering assets, but they've heard from their users that sometimes they'll open up the app and it'll be a while before they get all the information, and it's timing out before they can hit submit. They need some indication of when their login is going to time out, so they know they need to refresh it before entering it. So we'll use both a custom connector and a Powerapps component framework control to show that information to the user. I've already added the connector. If we look at our data sources tab here, we see we've added this API, the connector to Azure AD, so that's already ready to go. On the screens here in the app, I am setting an auth value variable to the value of the authorization for that connector. So I'm going to take that variable and feed it into our custom control. But first, I need to add the control to our app. So underneath custom, I would say import component, go over to code experimental, and I would choose, in this case, the JWT reader, and click import. So I've already done that already, so I'm not going to click import here, but that's what you would do. And now I'll add it to the application. Add that in. This particular control does not have any UI, it just has logic for the back end. So we'll leave that alone, and for the UI, we'll also insert a label. We'll drag the label up to the corner instead of just saying text, which is not super useful. We will say this expires, and before I try to use it, I'm going to rename this control because the default name is not useful. We'll call that expiry. And we need to set that web token also to the auth value. So, okay, that looks like a Java web token. So we've got that. We need to set the visibility of that to none, so because we don't get all that debug information. And then in our label, if I can find that, there it is. We'll say expires on expiry dot. And I've got 3 different versions of it. I can do the full version, I can do a Unix timestamp, but I'll just take the short version. And in this case, it just says it expires in 30 minutes, so now we've got the full app that says your login expires in 30 minutes, and now you can do your thing. And as that time goes on, it'll count down, and so users know they need to hurry up or start over. So that is a PCF control and a custom connector working together to provide value for the app. So as we build these out, one thing to keep in mind is you want your data calls, you want to keep that data layer access to the custom connector. If you want your Powerapps component framework controls to be UI layer, visualizations, using that data that's passed into them through Powerapps for visualizations, for layout, for all the pretty colors and charts and everything else you want inside a PCF control.
That's a cool demo. So could you name me a couple of examples of cool PCF components that you've seen people build?
I can. I've seen so many components I've seen the community build. We've been in preview since the spring, and the community has been amazing in creating these PCF controls. I've seen credit card readers, I've seen regular expression validators, I've seen emoji pickers, I've seen color pickers, on and on and on. There's just so many controls. Actually, I want to give a shout out to one of our MVPs, Guido Pertitti. He created a website called Pcf Gallery. It's not just a great URL, that is the URL, but it's a community website where people have submitted a number of Powerapps Component Framework components, along with blog posts and often GitHub repos that you can go out there and check it out.
That sounds cool. So is there any particular component that you like best? Is there something that you've seen that you said like, oh, I like this one?
It's going to sound a little favoritistic, but the one that my group has created that we're going to be putting out, this Azure Map Control. Instead of taking a list of accounts and addresses, it actually puts the pinpoints on a map. Makes it a lot easier for a user, makes it a lot better for an application. But there's an even better map control I've seen some of our partners create. And honestly, the emoji slider is pretty good too.
What does the emoji slider do?
It was pretty simple. It's just a slider back and forth at the bottom, and as you dragged it across, it would go through the different emojis: the happy, sad, smiley, angry, yada yada yada.
So basically, if we look at the Powerapps component framework, there's a lot of abilities that ProDev developers can use to build their custom controls, and basically combined with these custom connectors, there's a lot of opportunity, right? There's so much you can do.
There is. Once you're inside your API, or once you're inside your component framework control, you're in code. And once you're in code, you know, as a professional developer, you can go crazy. You can use a full breadth of Azure capability. You can use the full breadth of the NPM community that's out there. It's all open to you. There's no limitations. Once you're in your code, go nuts.
Great stuff. So for people who want to learn more, where do they need to go?
There's 2 places. There's a quick hit at aka.ms/PCFblog. That was our announcement from when we go into preview. And we also have aka.ms/PCFdocs. That's our link to our documentation website where you can find out examples, reference controls, and then all the APIs as well.
Okay. Amazing stuff, Greg. Thank you very much for explaining this to us. I think Treddy here helped us making sure that your demo went pretty smooth. He's a great dyno over here. So I want to finish this segment here, and I hope you enjoyed it. And see you later. More clips coming.
Hi there, I'm Seth Juarez.